Okay, let's look at some of the topics that we're going to be going through. Digestion. Now, everything gets back to digestion, all right? But a lot of people will think of digestion, well, that's, stomach acid, maybe some digestive enzymes. No. Yeah, of course, but it's so much more than that, all right? If we look at digestion and assimilation and liberation of minerals, it's all about opposing forces, all right? It's all about opposing forces. It's all about the opposing forces of acid and alkaline. And it's a shearing of these forces that liberate the minerals. He talks about that because we must have the right pHs in the right place for that to happen. And through this course, we'll learn how to do that. We'll learn how to interpret that. And to be honest, I think this is one of the biggest elephants in the living room with a lot of people's health, and especially digestion, is not understanding the physics of it and the physics of assimilation, okay? Because we're just too carried away with plastered all the time with sups and take this and take that and, suppress your hydrochloric acid and, beta blockers and, all these sorts of things, antacids and whatnot, which is going to do nothing other than just completely mess a person up. And I guess like I said, everything gets back to digestion, but when digestion is out for long enough, which it is for most people that are sick, what happens is we tend to get some other of these mechanisms out of whack. And we can't just work on digestion. You probably could, it will take an enormous amount of time. It's about identifying which other areas are out of balance and where do they fit in the hierarchy. And that's gonna point us and give us direction as far as what we need to do today. And then what we do next week will depend on the feedback from our body. Okay, this is what I did when I got very, very sick 10 years ago. This is what got me into this work. For those of you that don't know, I had a heart attack, I had fibromyalgia, I had liver stress. I was a mess. Okay, and I started looking for help. I went to mainstream first, and I threw that, and I gave that away very, very quick because everyone was telling me something different. But what surprised me, as I did more research on the internet and books and whatnot, I also found in even natural health, there was a lot of conflicting information. A lot of confusion. I'm like, well, surely everyone can't be right. And they probably were right, but they were right for them. They were right for them. Every book that's written on a diet is probably perfect for the person that wrote it, but not other people. All right, we're all biologically unique, and unless we understand that uniqueness, we're going blind. Okay. Electrolyte and mineral issues. This is a big one. This is on top of the hierarchy. This is the first thing that we test. And I can tell you now, I can almost guarantee anybody that's got any help with their health have never been checked to see, do we have the means to move electrons around the body? Do we have the power switch turned on in the first place? Because if we don't, what's the point of doing anything else? We don't have the resources. The body can't do it. Sorry, it might help a little bit, and this is why you take sups, you feel better for a while, and after a while you go, oh, it's just gone back to where it was. Of course, because we're tackling things at the wrong level. So electrolytes and mineral issues are a big one, and the majority of people I work with will have an issue in this area. They just don't have the energy. The switch isn't turned on, and they're wondering why they're not fixing. Okay, the next one on the hierarchy is cellular membrane dynamics. I know this sounds a bit technical, yeah? Don't worry about this. This is aimed at everybody, this course, all right? It's not just for professionals, all right? As you go through, you'll understand this. There's some big words here, but believe me, I would never have learned all this stuff if it was that complex and hard. So the cellular membrane lipid dynamics, this is the anabolic, catabolic, you've all heard me talk about this. This is our circadian rhythm of life. Now, do you think it's important to understand where that is? Do you think it's, can you imagine if, say, for instance, tomorrow the sun didn't come up or the sun didn't go down at the end of the day? Can you imagine the chaos in nature that would happen as a result because of the environment change? And the same with us. We have a circadian rhythm. Our membranes open in the morning, all right? This is why we wake up, because our membranes open. Now we have more oxygen. Oh, I'm awake. Because we have more energy now. Because at nighttime, your energy goes right down because you go into a different state. Now, so in the day, we wake up and we're the factory of life is in motion. You know, we're detoxing, we're metabolizing, we're breaking down. It's not until the evening, until late in the day, that we move into this anabolic state. Okay, circadian rhythm, catabolic, anabolic. Everything I'm talking about here does a diphasic, except digestion. So anabolic, catabolic. Now, if we don't move into that anabolic state at night, or we didn't in the evening, or we didn't move out of it in the morning, we're going to run into so many problems, because we're not getting, we're not having that balance with what's coming into the cells, what's coming out of the cells. And this is where we run into problems with tumors and stuff like that. So the cell, this is Revisi. A lot of this work comes from Revisi. Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot of work on that. I geek out on membranes. You will learn how to be able to manipulate membranes very, very quickly. Do you want to switch them on? You want to switch them off. We have a client, or yourself, if we understand that I'm too anabolic, well, how do we get in there and change that? All right, now we can go mainstream. All right, so I'm very anabolic. I've got no oxygen coming in my tissues. Maybe I've got a tumor. What am I going to do? How do I get those membranes open? Well, you can go to mainstream and go get chemotherapy. And what's chemotherapy going to do? It's going to bang holes in cells to make them more permeable, so oxygen can come in and kill the cancer. All right, you can do that very, very easily without going to chemotherapy, just using certain minerals, and also understanding, of course, all the time, that if we're working on that, understanding the interconnections with everything else to make sure that we're not compromising something else. And you're going to learn all that, all right? And I guess one way of explaining this work is, I'm not going to teach you any more than what you might already know about how the liver works, or how the heart works, or what. It's not about that. That's, you can find that information anywhere. It's more about, how do we think about this? Yeah, when we analyze this, when we see this, how do we think about the patterns? How do we interpret this? And this is where a lot of this, the power of this course comes. It's like thinking, it's a thinking technology more than anything else. It's thinking technology, it's stuff we know, but we have never put it together in the way that we put together with this course. Because you just don't understand. So you get to the point where you might see a symptom, or you might see a condition or a disease, and you ask a couple of questions, bang! You've been able to go, okay, that's there, okay, that's the problem. And you'll do it without even thinking, okay? I do this stuff now without even thinking. And there are many variables, but the only way to start learning them is start doing them for yourself, and you will start learning them. It's like riding a bike. And when you start learning some of these, before you know it, you go like, I know what that is. Oh, you've got that going on. What's your pHs? What's your blood sugar? Aha. All right. It's so powerful. It's brilliant. Okay. It's a blast. Energy production. This is all about whether our body is balancing the metabolism of carbohydrates and fats. Okay. Do we have a gallbladder that's working? If we don't, well, we're going to struggle with fats. If we're going to struggle with fats, we're going to struggle with consistent energy. We're going to struggle with 50 to 70 trillion cell membranes, because they will have fats. They will have bilipid membranes. Do you think it's important that we understand and we make sure that we do have the ability to be able to emulsify, break down, and assimilate fats? Did you know that fats were actually brought into the body through the lymphatic system? Okay. It's through lymphatic. How many people have lymphatic stress? Many. How many people are struggling with gallbladder? Many. Okay. So we work on the gallbladder, we work on the liver, we open up that pathway, and all of a sudden, things start to happen. And energy production, this is like fast oxidizer, slow oxidizer. And this is where we have a really big effect on weight loss and mental health and stuff like that. Okay, we've got to get it in balance. We need carbs. I look at carbs as the kindling to the fire, and the logs are the proteins and the fats. And if we don't have the proteins and the fats, this is going to be our life. Yeah, because our body is struggling to get the fats. Now you can imagine a body that is predisposed to having problems burning carbs for energy, and we have a gallbladder that's struggling as well. What's going to happen? Are you going to have any energy? No, there is none. You're in the zone of misery. Your body is struggling to burn carbs, and it wants to burn fats, but it can't because it doesn't have the mechanisms to do so. So you can start to see how important this stuff is, all right? Because I see this all the time, okay? The autonomic nervous system, the pH system, regulates the system here of the body. Look, with the nervous system is a reactionary system, okay? And it will react according to the stresses within the body and stresses outside the body as well. But if we've got imbalances with electrolytes and our membranes are out of whack and our oxidation's out of whack, well, our nervous system's going to be like, it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be reacting. So the nervous system and the pH side of things are really like the tail of the biological dog. Yeah, they will wag according to what's going on up here. Once we start fixing these things up here, you'll start to see the pH come into balance. You'll start to see the nervous system come into balance, just like magic. And it happens. Okay, it happens as you start focusing on these numbers and move away from subjectivity and focusing on symptoms or conditions, which are every illness is nothing other than a symptom of a body that has the inability to be able to manage it. It can't be anything else. Not everyone gets a virus is going to die or get sick. So what's the difference? It's the body. It's not the virus. It's not the cancer. The cancer is only there because the environment allowed it to be there. And it's a dead cert. If you provide the environment for cancer, you know, low oxygen delivery to your cells or your tissues, you're not eating properly, you have some stress, a few other things, what's going to happen? Cancer, tumors. Okay, so what do we got to do? How do we get oxygen into the system? How do we do this? How do we do that? We've got to work at everything. Okay, Zeta potential. We're going to be doing a lot of work on zeta potential. This comes from T.C. McDaniel and a guy called Thomas Riddick. He's a colloidal chemist. Once again, this sounds a bit like technical, right? It is not. It's not that technical. You think of anything in suspension, you know, anything in solution, and it's in suspension. It's not settling. Every one of those particles in suspension and any solution have a negative charge on the outer edge, and it's a negative charge against negative charge that keeps these things discrete, these particles. Now, if we look at blood cells, it's no our blood system. It's no different. Every red blood cell has a negative charge around the, well, it should have a negative charge, a very, very, very slight negative charge on the outer edge. And so that when it comes across another red blood cell, what happens is they just bounce off. This is how we keep circulation. This is how we keep cells apart. We prevent coagulation. It's all about, and zeta potential is really just about the measurement of the degree of repulsion, if you like. You know, how strong is that? How strong is that force? And if we have a body that's very high level of medicines or toxins or eating processed food and whatnot, all processed food. Oh, and the negative charge. Just remember the negative charge. Okay, so it's a negative charge. All processed food, all toxins, all these medicines. They're all positive charge. This is why they're a problem. Okay, they're a positive charge. So if you eat a lot of processed food, you're bringing in all these protons. We want electrons. We want negatively charged particles, and we're bringing in all these positively charged. And what happens? We start to disrupt zeta potential, and cells start to stick together. They're not dispersing anymore. They're sticking together because they've lost that charge. Remember, similar charges will disperse, opposites will attract, okay? So it's a big deal, because obviously circulation is very, very important, okay? Unless you have a dark field microscope on your desk, it's difficult to be able to understand whether the blood is coagulated or not. How much of a problem is that causing? Is it if we're coagulated? It's a massive thing because we're not getting nutrition into cells and we're not getting oxygen into the cells. Our energy comes right down. We're not detoxing properly, okay? Because we don't have that flow. Our river of life is dried up. Our river of life is agglutinated, okay? You will learn some techniques where you can change this in 10 minutes, okay? I used to do it in clinic. I'll look at someone's blood, coagulated, and I'll say, here, do this, or now, depending on what you do, would depend on the chemistry at the time. It's not the same for everybody. And you can make the difference, and you can see the difference within 10 minutes. Grounding is also Very, very important. This is why grounding is so good for circulation. That grounding is very good for health. We should all be grounding. And if you're not grounding, you have to ground. It's the most important part of my protocol. It's right at the top. Is grounding. Why? Because you're bringing in all the electrons, negatively charged. Okay? I'm sure some of you have been stuck, have a bit of a cold or sinuses a bit blocked up. What happens when you go to the beach? You have a swim. Oh, I'm so clear. I feel so good. Electrons. And the air, the salt air as well. It's a negatively charged. Disperse, flow. Okay? It's critical. Free radicals and antioxidants, we go into that a little bit as well, because a lot of people, some people don't need antioxidants. Some people need to oxidate more. We need more oxygen. All right. Remember that oxygen, the fact that we breathe in oxygen in the first place, dictates that we will die eventually. If we don't die from something else, we'll die from the breakdown because oxygen is it's an unstable molecule. We need it. We need it to be unstable because it gives us energy. But you can imagine there's too much of it. That's when we get breakdown. We age quicker and we get cellular degeneration. And this is where we can get cancers as well, because everything's just a little bit messy. So you need to understand that. Reduction and oxidation. I guess these two are basically the same. We sort of cover that, reduction and oxidation. It's just that balance. Yeah, balance and understanding energy flow through the body. And understanding when you're working for yourself or you're working with a client, being able to look at that and say, do you have this flow? Is the power switch turned on? Okay. Protein metabolism, this is another area that we're going to, it's throughout. I guess the protein metabolism sort of impacts on a lot of these systems, but we'll be putting a lot of emphasis on this because I have no doubt that a lot of cancers, especially in the lymphatics system, are started or begin life as congestion in the lymphatic system because of protein molecules that haven't been broken down, because we haven't got enough hydrochloric acid, we haven't got enough bile, we haven't got the right pHs in the digestive tract to be able to break these molecules down enough. So we're bringing a molecule into the body, and what happens is a large molecule, it can actually pop out. Well, there's two things can happen. The body looks at it as an invader, and if your liver's struggling and whatnot, and it can't deal with it right now, well, you're going to put on weight because it will wrap it up into a fat cell and stash it away. It can't deal with it. But some of these molecules actually pop out of the bloodstream into the tissues. And this is where they can start to get stuck if we've got a sluggish lymphatic system. And if that happens, we're in trouble. Because then we get coagulation, there's no oxygen. What's going to happen? We're going to get acidic. Right? Now that acid didn't come from what we ate. Yeah? It comes from within. Oh, cancer tumor. Cancer doesn't come directly from what you stick down your throat. It comes from imbalances within the body, and what you stick down your throat may have some impact on that, of course, but it's not a direct thing, meaning, well, we alkalize and it must be better. Absolute nonsense, and you'll learn that through it, okay? Very, very powerful stuff. The science behind weight loss, I'm going to do a section on it because there's a lot of people, well, everyone wants, not everyone, but it's a big deal with a lot of my clients. They want to lose weight. And we've got to understand why is the body holding on in the weight in the first place. And I will cover that. We'll have a section on that. It's brilliant. And you'll really get to understand the science behind weight loss. All right. Like everything with this work, when you understand it and you see it, you go like, oh, that's so damn obvious, isn't it? Yeah, it is. We're thinking too complex. It's not complex. We're not complex. Yeah. A zebra in the middle of national park in Africa doesn't think about what he's eaten or if he's got enough amino acids or should he take some MSM or something like that. The zebra is just is. It's in the environment. It's in the right environment. And therefore it just happens. And we're the same. It's not complex. It's not complex. Nutrition in your mind. We talked about George Watson before, and this is once again, I want to. There's a lot of people with anxiety, depression, and stuff like that. It's a big deal. Now, we're not going to necessarily go in and have a whole thing on. I'm not an expert on depression. All right, but what I am an expert on is being able to get our body into a balanced especially with digestion and oxidation and stuff like that. So, because that has such a big impact on depression and anxiety and stuff like that. If we don't deal with that, we don't deal with anxiety or stress because we don't have the buffer or the robustness, if you like, or I'll go one step higher, adaptive capacity. Yeah, 4 people can be in one room and there can be a bit of stress coming. There's some stressful news. Everyone's going to react differently according to their ability to be able to buffer that stress. Shit happens. The question is, how does your body respond? Okay, so that's another way of looking at this work. It's building adaptive capacity. You can't stop some things happening, but you can prevent. You can work on how your body responds to those stresses. And if you don't have good adaptive capacity, and you're anxious and you're stressed, and we've got all this going on, we've got poor digestion, we've got no energy flowing, what's going to happen? Stress comes along, bang. Here we are, down. Yeah. If stress happens to me, or a perceived stressful situation with me, I'm not a Puritan with everything. Sometimes I'll go and have a drink or something like that. Not very often, but I do. That will put a bit of stress on the body, but my body just goes straight back. Right? No impact. All right? We don't want this. This is where everybody's at. The body can't deal with it. And when it can't do that, what's it going to do? It's going to start stealing and it's going to start robbing other parts of the body to try and make up the slack. And we've got to understand which parts of the body are being compromised to do that. Body doesn't care. It'll put you in a wheelchair with osteoporosis and crumble your bones if it needs minerals for the blood to keep you alive, because priority is to keep you alive, of course. Priority is your blood and your cardiovascular system. If that's compromised, you're dead. But does your body care about does it care about other things? Does it care about a bit of inflammation over here? Does it care about your bones? Well, of course it cares about it, but there's a priority here. We need that, otherwise we're going to die. So we'll go to the bones, we'll take it, we'll make it a cripple. All right? We've got to understand what your body has compromised in order to, it's a little bit like a live blood test. Sorry, not a live blood test, a mainstream blood test. How many people have gone to a doctor, sick as a dog, get a blood test, come back next week, doctor says, all looks good, go home, you're stressing, take some pills. You got depression. There's nothing wrong because the blood test comes back okay. And that is because the blood is a compensated fluid, which means the body will compensate it from wherever to make it look good. So if you can physically walk into the doctors and get have a blood test, the chances are it's going to come back okay. And you go like, well, it's not okay. I'm sick. You think I'm crazy. We've got to look deep. We've got to look deeper. We've got to dig in and understand what has been compromised, what part of the body has been compromised, because that's going to be your focus to fix. All right, because that's where the problem is. All right, the blood will always, of course, the blood is going to look good. Otherwise, you'd be dead or very, very sick. Yeah, observing the dance. One of the things that we did have a section on the last program that we did I did a video on the bloods and we talked about different conditions and stuff like that. What I'm going to be doing with this program is a lot more detailed. So as we go through the learning, if we're going to be talking about inflammation, coagulation, all these sorts of things, you know, liver issues, what I'm going to be doing is bringing in actually live blood videos and also dry blood when we need to. We'll be bringing those in at certain times so that you can understand and have a much better understanding of what's going on. Because if you can understand those connections, you know, everyone talks about inflammation. Yeah, well, let's come down here. Look at this one here, liver bowel stress. You see all this little white. Oh, hang on. This white webbing. This is all the result of inflammation. Now, if you can see that, it helps. It really massively helps you be able to put everything together. Yeah. Because you're not blind anymore. So I'll be bringing in, well, I've got lots of videos, and if we, and they will be peppered throughout. And if, like I said, if I'm discussing something, and let's have a look. What does it look like? What's going on in the blood? Yeah. You know, do we have an immune system that's working properly? We might have an immune system, but is it working? Are they viable and stuff like that? And you'll get an appreciation. Undigested minerals, things like that. Also toxins and stuff like that. Get an idea of how the body deals with this. And that's going to help you problem solve because you got the whole picture. So live blood, I'm not going to read all that. And then we've got the dry blood. Most of you are aware of the dry blood because that's what I do, because I can't do live blood. All right, very, very powerful stuff when you try and put everything together. All right, I'm going to skip through that. Okay, with the bloods, with the dry bloods, everyone's going to have the dry blood done as part of the. That's what's included in the cost. And as we move through the training, we can then refer back to our blood, as we will be also doing the metabolic analysis as well, which I'll touch on in a minute. We'll be doing that quite early, so that you've actually got it's a real thing. It's you. This is practical stuff. And as you learn it, you can refer it back to yourself as opposed or a client, as opposed to like, oh, I don't know, how that, you know, that doesn't sort of make sense. It doesn't relate to me. All right, I want to really bring that home as far as having that that close connection with relating what we're learning to yourself or to your clients or whatnot. All right, because then you can try stuff and you know we'll track it.